Today we're taking a look at another episode of The Owl House, Hooty's Moving Castle, which, the title at least, is a reference to Howl's Moving Castle, but I've never seen that, so if there's more references to it in the episode, I wouldn't know what they are. This is a pretty good episode, though. I kind of didn't really pay much attention to this one my first time through. It felt like, you know, the typical follow-up episode. It's a follow-up to Ida's Curse, but because it wasn't as exciting as The Intruder was, I just kind of wrote it off. But rewatching this episode for the review, which, you know, is when I'm going to really analyze it anyway, it stood out to me a lot more. The episode opens on Ida not realizing that her curse has started to affect her again because she's too busy playing Magic the Gathering, or whatever the heck this game is called that she's playing here. And oh, look at this, she's been neglectful and hasn't stocked back up on her elixir, again, because she's been really obsessed lately with playing this card game, which I wouldn't know anything at all about being obsessed with card games. Personally, myself, do I have any more? No, I don't have any more in Reach, but there's definitely more trading cards in here. Just FYI. So she takes Losing King to the market to buy more, but her supplier's out. And when she expresses that she really, really needs some, she's out too. He says she should have come in sooner, which is interesting. I didn't catch this the first time through. But this means that this elixir is not something that's just for staving off Ida's curse. Like obviously, it's not something she makes herself. But I didn't really think about what that meant the first time watching this episode. That means this is something that's commercial. It's something that people buy and use for other things. And I can't fathom the idea that there could be so many cursed people in this world that this would be specifically like a staving off curses elixir, which, if you recall back in the review of that episode, The Intruder, that's what it was called, right? I'm not getting that wrong, am I? I always second guess myself, even when I'm sure. Back when I was reviewing that episode, I mentioned that some of the stuff we learn about the curse later suggests that maybe this elixir actually just replenishes artificially Ida's magic. That her magic would eventually replenish itself on its own if it's used up, but because the magic keeps the curse at bay, she has to replenish it artificially, and she has to do so on a regular basis. And if that's the case, if that's what this elixir is for, it fits pretty well with the lore that we've gotten up to this point. That would explain why other people might buy it, and straight up, I think we might have seen somebody who does. Because I also suggested in that episode review that maybe somebody who didn't naturally have magic, who took the elixir, would be able to do Boiling Isles witch-style magic. And in this episode, we're introduced to a group of demon hunters who pop back up in the... I guess it's technically the A-plot, because it's what the episode's named for, but it didn't feel like the A-plot to me. The stuff with the curse felt like the A-plot. But the other half of this episode, they come back in that they're these guys. They're clearly not witches or humans. They're clearly some kind of creature people, right? Unless witches... I guess witches can also be creature people, can't they? Technically. I don't know. For whatever reason, this guy just didn't strike me as the kind of creature person you saw in the school. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about this. But he didn't feel... He and his group felt different. It felt like they gave special attention to every time he used magic. I don't know. I could be reading too much into this. I'll have to go back and look at shots from the school and see if we see guys who look like him there. I don't know, but like the leader of them, he could do magic. He could do just regular magic, and they always made kind of a big deal about it. Every time he did it, they zoomed in on his hand and showed him making the magic circle instead of just, you know, showing him in shot doing the magic circle, right? It always felt like they were paying special attention to it. So I wonder if, and the other people in his team didn't really seem to be able to do it. So it made me wonder if maybe there are some people in this world who wouldn't be able to do magic normally if not for elixirs like this, which supports my theory that maybe Luz would be able to do more traditional style magic if she took the elixir. And this is all supported later on in the episode, the ideal that the elixir imbues somebody with magic. When at one point the curse is starting to get worse and Ida's not able to do magic until she takes it. But that could also be explained away by the fact that once the curse starts to get bad, she has to devote more of her own magical resources to keeping it at bay so that she doesn't hulk out. So I don't know, it's interesting. I'm definitely having fun going back through the lore, but going back through these episodes and trying to work this bit of the lore out. It's very enjoyable for me. But anyway, coming off of that tangent there, while they're at the market and while Ida is getting all this bad news, Luz runs into her friends Willow and Gus. They want to do a moonlight conjuring. It's kind of like a witch slumber party, but not really, because it can only be done once a year, and the ultimate goal of it is to use moon magic to animate an inanimate object for a temporary period of time. The witch stuff in this is so great, and we get a really great Luz joke, like a Luz comedy moment from this scene. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's really good. Her style of humor is really great. Amity and the other popular girls from Hexside are doing their own conjuring, and they didn't invite Willow. In fact, they insulted her at the same time as making it clear that she wasn't invited, which sucks. And I didn't realize this at first, and I had kind of forgotten about it when we got to more of Willow and Amity's shared backstory later on in the season. But this plot actually serves to set some stuff up for later, and it does so really well in hindsight, which is really cool, because this is a not as exciting but still effective sequel to a really great episode, and also sets up some really great episodes at the same time. That's not something that every show can pull off in a single episode. And Luz asks Ida if they can use the owl house to do the conjuring. I don't know why they couldn't just, go to Willow's house or something instead. Which is a bit of a plot hole, I guess. But it's not bad. It's not like it matters. But Ida says no, because she's going to have to come back to the night market tonight, which, doesn't sound reputable at all. And immediately you kind of gather that it's going to be shady and dangerous, and it's something she's going to have to take seriously. And so she can't be there with them. She also puts down the conjuring, which I thought was a little rude of her, but she makes up for it later. And in fact, the fact that she didn't take their want to perform the conjuring seriously and be like, okay, but here's what you have to be careful to do and not do, right? Kind of ties back into the themes of this episode, which I'll get to in a minute. But she's going to have to come to the night market to try to find a guy called Grimhammer, or, as we find out later, Tibbles, because he is simultaneously adorable and the worst person ever, to buy more of the elixir to hold her over until her regular supplier can get some more in the following week. She just needs one bottle. That's all she needs. But she's going to have to take this risk to do it. She's going to bring King with her, which is probably a good thing, because King is very incorrigible, and he probably would have ended up making things worse, seeing what comes later. Anyway, when Luz hears that the conjuring can only be done once a year, of course she says that they can do it anyway. They just have to sneak around. And usually I absolutely hate the cliche, the teenagers throw a party when the parental figure's not home kind of plots, but this episode actually does it really well. The fact that this was one of those is probably why I kind of half checked out when I was watching it the first time. But rewatching it and actually paying attention actually does it really well. It plays the trope straight, but at the same time kind of subverts it, which I really liked. But anyway, let's run through the rest of Ida's plot first. Then I'll talk about the plot with the conjuring, because that kind of rounds out the episode. Ida and King do show up. They find this guy, and he wants to charge an unreasonable price for the elixir, but Ida sees that he has some of those, whatever the heck they were called, cards, and challenges them to a game, and he hustles the crap out of her, beats her, wins King, and then reveals that he can do magic, which I definitely don't think he's a witch. But the magic he does is yellow like the elixir, which makes me, again, wonder if the elixir has something to do with this. Again, I could be reading too much into this. Maybe I'm just wrong, but it's still, I think worth pointing out. But he does magic to capture her and reveals that he has one of her wanted posters and plans to turn her in to the Emperor's Coven. Which sucks for her. And so seeing the kind of situation she's gotten herself into, not just because she was neglectful, but because she became obsessed with this thing. Not that she, shouldn't enjoy the thing at all, but that she shouldn't let it take over her life. She takes responsibility, and in the end, and this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler for the other plot that I'm not talking about yet, the owl house with chicken legs walks through the night market and knocks one of the elixir vials close enough to her that she's able to drink it and free herself and leave. Which probably sounds really freaking crazy. We'll get to that in a minute. It was the story rewarding her for taking responsibility, right? And it's a little cheesy and contrived, but it works fine, I think. And now she has a nemesis in the form of Tibbles. I should hate this character. He's absolutely loathsome. He's the most loathsome thing a person can be. No, not a hustler. No, not someone who would turn you into the authorities. He's a capitalist. But I kind of love him. I think he's pretty great as far as characters go. But she does notice that it's her house, so she rushes home. And this is where her story properly intersects with the other story. In trying to animate an action figure, because, of course, Gus is there and Ida has a bunch of human stuff in the house and he's obsessed with human stuff, they accidentally animate the whole house, and Hooty, in particular, becomes entranced by their magic. So now the three of them can drive the house around Baba Yaga style, and not only do people see them, not only do they use this opportunity to tell off one of the popular girls that was being mean to Willow earlier, but they get the idea to actually walk the house over to Amity's house and show off how powerful a conjuring they were able to do. But that's when these demon hunters from earlier find them. And they want to sell Hooty for meat, which he has more of now because he's got chicken legs too, as well as just a seemingly endlessly long, weird bird neck. And they throw the kids off a cliff. So immediately, these guys are just the worst. We don't have to feel sympathetic about them at all. We don't have to feel bad for what happens to them at all either. And Willow feels terrible because she's the one who took things too far. Luz let them use the house when she was told not to. But Willow's the one who insisted they go show off to Amity. Because as we learned in this episode, they used to be friends. But then Amity got her magic earlier and became friends with these popular girls and just left Willow at the wayside. And she wanted to get back at her for that. She wanted to show off how strong she is, but now she feels like because she made this mistake, because she insisted on them pushing their luck when they shouldn't have, this is all her fault. And it's dredged up a bunch of personal insecurities that she's felt for a while. She doesn't feel powerful, which is ridiculous. She's really powerful. She even manages to fight off all the demon hunter guys with a giant plant that she conjures. She's a very powerful witch in this one area. I don't think she alone would have been powerful enough to animate the house. There's a line from Ida later, like at the very end of the episode, how animating the house would take really powerful magic, and it shows Luz and Willow in frame. So I'm thinking that's the implication, that Luz and Willow are both unusually powerful. But she is very powerful, and Luz tells her that outright, that she's powerful, that she doesn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And having that positive affirmation, it's how she kind of gets her groove back and is able to fight back against the demon hunters. It's really cool. It's a really cool scene. Like I'm remembering it. The way Luz delivers the line, the way Willow reacts, it's very well voice acted. It's very well animated. It's just a nice, touching scene that I wish I had paid more attention to the first time. Because I do really like these characters, and I do feel like my usual bias against these kinds of plots turned me off from experiencing a really cool moment with them. I don't know, it's just worth mentioning. I should have given this episode more credit. But anyway, the three of them, because it has to be the three of them. They needed 3 people to do the Conjuring in the first place, and they all did it together, so it has to be the three of them. The three of them together are able to command the house back into place and dismiss the Conjuring in time, we think. But no, it turns out Ida's actually already back, and she catches them. And this is where I think this episode does this trope really well, actually. Usually, it's a victory for the kid characters if they get away with throwing the party or whatever behind the back of the parental figure, right? But in this one, instead, that victory came from them recognizing that they shouldn't have taken things so far and receiving a fair punishment for their disobedience, but then the parental figure also realizing that she was probably too hard on them and recognizing that she should have not only taking responsibility for her own part in this, because she would have been there if she'd been responsible and stocked up on elixir, but also realizing that, hey, this is a thing I should have supported in the end, because she even wants to join in with them next year for the next Conjuring. And that's what I mean by this being both the trope played straight and also a subversion of it. They do both, and they find a good balance of both, and it works super well. And even as a bonus, at the end of the episode, we see that the popular girls, including Amity, know about the animation of the house and are impressed by it. So they did kind of get their little bit of revenge, but at the same time, this is where the episode really does a good job of setting up for later stuff. We see they failed to animate their thing, a small doll, which could just mean, because it's implied that the people have to be friends in order for this to work, which could imply that these people aren't really friends, which would make sense, because they suck, except for Amity, but she kind of sucks right now. It could imply that they're not as powerful as they think they are, but also you see after they've failed, Amity is sitting off on her own looking out the window, and my first time through this episode, I interpreted that as her being disappointed that they had failed. But now I think she's disappointed that she's not spending time with her real friend, trying to do this with her real friend. Because she says something earlier when they're at the market, the day market, the regular market, and the other girls are making fun of Willow to her face. Amity says something along the lines of, oh, leave her alone, it's not her fault that she was born without talent or something, which at face value, that's a very mean thing to say. But if you look at it from the perspective of she is trying to save this person that she actually cares about as much grief as possible, because she thinks she has to be friends with these girls, that she has to be. It's like a family pride slash like class pride kind of thing. We learn about this later in the show. If we look at it from that perspective, that she's trying to save this person she cares about as much grief as possible, while also saving face with these people that she feels like she has to associate with, then it makes a whole lot more sense why she would go out of her way to say something like that that's so casually mean, but also ends the conversation and makes her friends move on and stop insulting Willow, right? It's just, her personality is super consistent from the very beginning, and looking back on it in hindsight, especially, you can really, you can see all of the clues that she isn't the person she initially appears to be. Like, I've seen some people say that Amity's heel face turn kind of comes out of nowhere, that she just goes from being a total bitch to being a relatively good person, I guess is the best way to put it. But if you look back on it and really look at the clues that were laid out, that's just not the case at all. This is a really solid episode. It gives me a lot of stuff to talk about. I don't think it's as good as the last couple have been, but it's still very strong. And as I mentioned before, it does a good job of following some stuff up and also setting some stuff up for later, which is fun for somebody who enjoys lore. In fact, there's more lore in this episode than I even remembered there being, which is always fun when you're revisiting a show to stumble upon lore that you didn't even know was there. But as per usual, guys, I'd like to know, what did you think of Hooty's moving hassle? If you have seen it, Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video and share it with anyone else you think might enjoy my content. I'm trying to get myself out there, and I'd really appreciate it if you guys could help out. And of course, if you'd like to have a more direct discussion with me, you can send me an ask over on my Tumblr or at me on my Discord. The links to both of those are in the description down below. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.